The silence of the Seoul Museum of Modern Art at 9:00 p.m. was a physical weight, one that Kang Jin-woo usually found comforting. As the CEO of a firm that specialized in digital security, his life was a cacophony of data breaches and board meetings. Here, among the minimalist sculptures, he could breathe. He stood before a jagged piece of granite, his reflection in the glass casing revealing a man whose suit was perfectly tailored, but whose eyes were perpetually tired. He was 40, successful, and currently the most hated man in the inner circles of the Mirai Group, not because he had failed, but because he knew where the bodies were buried. "That piece isn't meant to be stared at from the front," a voice said, breaking the stillness. "It's built for the periphery. You're trying to force it to give you an answer it doesn't have." Jin-woo turned. Standing by the velvet rope was a woman with hair cut in a sharp, boyish bob that accentuated the high porcelain bridge of her nose. She wore the navy vest of the museum's night staff, but she carried herself with a weary grace that didn't match the low-status uniform. Her name tag read, Lee Han-byul. "I prefer things that are direct," Jin-woo replied, his voice habitually cool. "Ambiguity is a liability in my line of work." "Then you're in the wrong building, Kang Jin-woo-si," she said, using his name without the honorific of his title. He didn't correct her. He was intrigued by the lack of flattery in her tone. In his world, people either bowed or snarled. Han-byul did neither. She simply adjusted her glove and looked at the granite. "You've been coming here every Tuesday for 3 months. You aren't here for the art. You're looking for a way to look at something painful without blinking." Jin-woo felt a rare prickle of exposure. He had been sidelined 3 years ago by a fabricated embezzlement charge, orchestrated by Oh Seung-hyun, the golden boy of the Mirai Group. Though he had cleared his name legally, the social stain remained a shadow that kept him out of the galas where the real power resided. He needed a way back in, not for the money, but to expose the fact that Seung-hyun's recent green energy initiative was built on a foundation of toxic land and silenced whistleblowers. "I need a partner for the Mirai Anniversary Gala," Jin-woo said, skipping the pleasantries. He knew she was more than a guard. He'd seen her reading legal transcripts in the break room during his previous visits. Someone who knows how to navigate that world but has no love for it. "I've done my research, Han-byul-si. I know who your father was." Han-byul stiffened. Her father had been the head engineer who refused to sign off on the Mirai construction project, the one who died in a hit-and-run a week after his resignation. "You want a prop," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "A pretty girl with a tragic backstory to make you look human." "I want a witness," Jin-woo corrected. "And I want someone who wants Seung-hyun to lose as much as I do. I'll provide the platform. You provide the truth." Han-byul looked at him, her dark eyes scanning his guarded expression. "I don't wear heels, and I don't follow scripts. If I go as myself." "That," Jin-woo said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips, "is exactly what I'm counting on." 2 days later, they met at a secluded tea house in Hanam-dong, a place where the partitions were thick and the tea was served with the solemnity of a ritual. Jin-woo placed a folder on the low wooden table. It wasn't a marriage contract or a romantic ruse. It was an evidentiary map. "The gala is in 2 weeks, Jin-woo began, his tone professional. "Oh Seung-hyun is being vetted for the National Assembly. This event is his coronation. If we disrupt it, we don't just hurt his pride. We stop his political career before it starts." Han-byul didn't touch the folder. She sipped her bitter persimmon tea, her short hair tucked neatly behind her ears. "My conditions are simple. First, you do not touch me unless it is for the sake of the performance. Second, you pay for the legal fees of the 3 families currently suing Mirai for the Ilsan groundwater contamination. Third, when this is over, you stay out of my life. I like my silence." Jin-woo studied her. She was fiercely independent, a woman who had spent 5 years working 3 jobs to keep her family's dignity intact, while the world called her father a coward. He felt a sudden, sharp pang of respect. He was used to people bargaining for luxury. She was bargaining for justice for others. "Agreed," Jin-woo said. "But you should know the risks. Sung-hyun doesn't just cancel people, he ruins them. He'll look for every crack in your history. He already took everything that mattered, she replied, her gaze unwavering. He can't ruin a ghost. Jin-woo reached out, his hand hovering over the table, almost as if to offer comfort, but he caught himself. He wasn't good at comfort, he was good at strategy. He retracted his hand and opened the folder. I've secured a gown for you. It's understated. You'll be introduced as a consultant for my firm. We need to practice the nuances, how you hold a glass, how you deflect questions about your lineage. The hierarchy at these events is a minefield of who knows who. I know how they speak, Hanbyul said, her voice laced with a subtle bite. They use we when they mean I, and they ask about your hometown when they really want to know if your father owns land. I've spent my life being the help in rooms like that. I see everything they think they're hiding. Good, Jin-woo said. Then don't try to blend in. Just be the person who makes them feel like they're the ones out of place. As they left the tea house, a light rain began to fall. Jin-woo instinctively opened his umbrella and held it over her. Hanbyul paused, looking at the black silk canopy, then at him. It was a small gesture, one of basic etiquette. But in the sterile vacuum of Jin-woo's life, it felt heavy. They stood there for a moment, the city of Seoul blurred by the mist, two people bound by a shared ghost. The following week was a blur of preparation that felt more like a military operation than a social debut. Jin-woo brought Hanbyul to a private atelier in Cheongdam-dong. The designer, a sharp-tongued woman who had dressed 3 generations of chaebol brides, hovered over Hanbyul with a measuring tape. The hair is a problem, the designer muttered. We should add extensions. A soft wave would balance the jawline. No, Jin-woo said from the armchair, not looking up from his tablet. Keep the hair, it's her. Hanbyul met Jin-woo's eyes in the mirror. He wasn't looking at her with the predatory gaze of a man making over a masterpiece. He was looking at her with an odd kind of recognition. For the first time, she realized he wasn't just controlling her image. He was protecting her identity. Why? She asked later, as they sat in his sleek, minimalist apartment, surrounded by stacks of Mirai's internal audit reports. Most men in your position would want a trophy. A woman with short hair and a temper doesn't fit the CEO's muse archetype. Because trophies are easy to break, Jin-woo said, his voice quiet. He was loosening his tie, a rare sign of informality. And I don't need a muse. I need someone who can stand in the middle of a storm and not look for a place to hide. My mother was one of those perfect wives. She spent 30 years smiling while my father's family stripped her of her name, her career, and eventually, her health. When she died, they replaced her portrait within a month. He looked at the reports, his jaw tightening. I'm not doing this for a storybook ending, Hanbyul. I'm doing this because the world Sung-hyun lives in is built on the bones of people like my mother and your father. I want to see what happens when the bones start to speak. Hanbyul felt a shift in the air. The CEO persona was slipping, revealing a man who was deeply, quietly lonely, a man who had built a fortress of wealth to keep anyone from seeing the wreckage inside. She walked over and picked up a document he had been struggling to cross-reference. This entry here, she said, pointing to a redacted line in the logistics ledger. It's not a budget surplus. It's a hazardous waste disposal fee disguised as a charity donation to a shell foundation. My father mentioned this in his journals. He called it the ghost account. Jin-woo looked at the paper, then at her. Their fingers brushed a brief, accidental contact that sent a jolt through the room. Hanbyul didn't pull away immediately. For a second, the mission was forgotten. They were just 2 people standing in the dark, holding the only truth they had left. It was 2 a.m., and the city lights of Seoul hummed outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. They had been working for 6 hours. The training had turned into a genuine collaboration. Jin-woo, usually so rigid about his personal space, had allowed the coffee table to be buried under maps and post-it notes. You should eat, Jin-woo said, noticing Hanbyul rubbing her temples. I'll order something. No more high-end catering, she sighed. I can't look at another truffle oil crostini. Do you have ramyun? Jinwoo blinked. Ramyun? I haven't had instant noodles in this apartment since I moved in. Typical, she muttered, standing up. Check your pantry. Everyone has one emergency pack they forgot about. To his surprise, she found a dusty package of spicy noodles in the back of a cabinet. 5 minutes later, the smell of MSG and steam filled the sterile kitchen. They sat on the floor, Jinwoo in his $4,000 trousers, Han Buell in her oversized sweater sharing a single pot. My father used to make this when my mother was working the late shift, Han Buell said, her voice softening. He'd tell me that the secret to a good life was knowing when to be serious and when to just enjoy the spice. He was a great engineer, but he was a better father. He didn't want me to be a success. He just wanted me to be real. Jinwoo watched her eat. The way her short hair fell forward. The way she didn't care about the splash of red broth on the marble floor. He realized he was staring. I don't think I've ever been real, he admitted. My entire life has been a series of strategic moves. Even this revenge, it feels like a chess game. It's not a game if you're hurting, Jinwoo, she said, using his name softly. It's okay to admit that you're angry. It's okay to admit that you're lonely. He looked away, his throat tight. If I admit that, I lose my focus. No, she said, reaching out and gently touching his forearm. It just means you have something to go home to when the fight is over. The silence that followed wasn't heavy like the museum. It was warm. For a moment, the hierarchy of CEO and employee, the roles of conspirators, and the ghosts of their pasts vanished. There was just the heat of the noodles and the quiet realization that they were no longer alone in their grief. The Shilla Hotel ballroom was a sea of black ties, silk gowns, and the suffocating scent of expensive lilies. The Mirai 30th Anniversary Gala was the event of the season. Cameras flashed at the entrance as the elite of Seoul arrived. Each smile practiced, each bow measured by the recipient's net worth. Jinwoo stepped out of the black sedan, his expression a mask of cool indifference. He turned and offered his hand to Han Buell. She stepped out, wearing a midnight blue silk dress that clung to her frame without being provocative. Her short hair was styled with a slight modern edge, and she wore no jewelry except for a pair of simple silver studs. She looked like a sharp blade hidden in a velvet sheath. Stay close, Jinwoo whispered as they approached the check-in. Remember, you're not a guest. You're the smartest person in the room. I know, she replied, her voice steady. I'm the one with the match. As they entered the ballroom, the crowd parted slightly. Whispers followed them. Is that Kang Jinwoo? Who is the woman? I thought he was blacklisted. Jinwoo ignored them, his eyes fixed on the far end of the room where Oh Seung-hyun stood, surrounded by politicians and journalists. Seung-hyun was the picture of a modern leader, handsome, charismatic, and projecting an aura of effortless benevolence. When he saw Jinwoo, his smile didn't falter, but his eyes turned predatory. He excused himself from his circle and walked toward them. Jinwoo-ya, Seung-hyun said, using the familiar address to assert dominance. I didn't think you'd have the nerve to show your face here after the difficulties your company had. A misunderstanding, as the courts decided, Jinwoo replied, his voice level. I wouldn't miss the anniversary of the company my father helped build, and I wanted to introduce you to my associate, Lee Han Buell. She's a specialist in archival integrity. Seung-hyun's gaze shifted to Han Buell. He did a double take, a flicker of recognition crossing his face before being suppressed by a mask of polite boredom. Archival integrity? A bit niche for a gala, isn't it? It's a very relevant field, Director O, Han Buell said, her voice clear enough to carry to the nearby tables, especially when dealing with legacy projects. Some things are buried so deep people forget they exist, but paper has a long memory. Seung-hyun's smile tightened. I'm sure. Enjoy the champagne. It's almost as expensive as the secrets people try to keep in this town. He walked away, but Jinwoo noticed the way Sunghyun's hand trembled slightly as he reached for a drink. The first crack had appeared. The main event was the Green Legacy presentation. Sunghyun stood on the podium, bathed in a soft green spotlight, speaking about Mirai's commitment to the future and their new filtration plant in Ilsan. The room was captivated. He spoke of purity, responsibility, and healing the land. As the applause died down, the floor was opened for community questions, a scripted segment designed for softball queries from friendly journalists. "I have a question regarding the technical specifications," Hanbyul said, standing up. She didn't wait for a microphone. Her voice was steady, cutting through the self-congratulatory atmosphere. Sunghyun squinted into the crowd. "Ah, the archivist, please." "The filtration plant uses the 2018 Delta 7 protocol," Hanbyul said. "But according to the internal safety audit, specifically document 702B, that protocol was flagged as insufficient for heavy metal runoff by the head engineer. The report was sealed 3 days before he died." The room went silent. The term document 702B was a ghost. It shouldn't have existed. It was the specific audit number of the report her father had died trying to protect. Sunghyun's face paled, then flushed a deep, angry red. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Miss Lee. There is no such document. Our records are transparent." "Then you wouldn't mind if we compared your records to the original ledger kept by the Seongjin disposal site?" Hanbyul continued, her gaze locked on his. "The one that shows Mirai paid for special disposal of toxic waste under the guise of a construction permit? My father signed the first page, Sunghyun-si, but he didn't sign the last." The face-saving facade of the gala shattered. The journalists began to murmur, their phones already out. Jinwoo stood beside her, his presence a silent wall of support. He didn't say a word, letting her voice be the one that dismantled the giant. Sunghyun tried to laugh it off, but the sound was hollow. "This is a charity event, not a courtroom. Security, please escort these guests out. They're clearly here to cause a scene." "We're leaving," Jinwoo said, stepping forward. He looked directly at the VIP table where the lead prosecutor was sitting, a man he had carefully tipped off hours before. "But before we go, Director O, you might want to check your email. A copy of 702B was just sent to the board of directors, and the evening news." As they walked out of the ballroom, the silence behind them was replaced by a roar of questions. They didn't look back. The cool night air of Seoul felt like a benediction after the stifling heat of the gala. They were in the parking garage, walking toward Jinwoo's car, when a black SUV screeched to a halt in front of them. 2 men in suits stepped out Sunghyun's personal security. "Director O wants the file," one of them said, his tone low and threatening. "Hand it over, and we can all forget this happened." Jinwoo stepped in front of Hanbyul. His posture was no longer that of a polished executive. It was that of a man who had grown up in the shadow of giants and learned how to bite back. "The file isn't on us. It's in the hands of 3 different law firms and a cloud server that triggers a public release if I don't check in every 6 hours. Tell Sunghyun to spend his remaining time calling his lawyers, not bothering my associate." The men hesitated, then retreated as the hotel's own security approached, alerted by the commotion. As they drove away, the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a cold, sharp fear. Hanbyul was shaking, her hands clenched in her lap. "You did it," Jinwoo said, his voice unusually thick with emotion. "You broke him." "I thought I'd feel better," she whispered. "I thought I'd feel like my father was back. But I just feel empty." Jinwoo pulled the car over in a quiet alleyway near the Han River. He turned to her, his expression pained. "It doesn't bring them back. Revenge is just clearing the weeds so you can see the ground again. But now the ground is clear, Hanbyul. You don't have to be a ghost anymore." She looked at him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "And you? What are you going to do?" "I don't know," he admitted. "For the first time in 10 years, I don't have a plan for tomorrow. In the dim light of the car, the distance between them collapsed. It wasn't a cinematic kiss. It was a slow, tentative leaning in a search for warmth in the wreckage. When their lips finally met, it tasted like salt and exhaustion. But underneath it was the foundation of something real. They stayed like that for a long time. The engine humming, the city of Seoul glowing in the distance. Two people who had finally stopped running. They spent the next few days in a safe house, a modest apartment Jinwoo owned under a corporate name. The news was a firestorm. Mireille's stock was plummeting. The Green Legacy project was being investigated by a special task force. But inside the apartment, the world was quiet. They spent the hours talking, not about evidence or revenge, but about their lives. Hanbyul told him about her dream of being a restorer of ancient texts, of how she loved the smell of old paper, because it felt like time was standing still. Jinwoo talked about his childhood, the pressure to be perfect, and how he used to hide in the attic to build model planes just to have something that was his own. "I almost didn't trust you," Hanbyul confessed one night as they sat on the balcony. "I thought you were just using me to get your company back. I thought you were just another version of Sung Hyun, just with better manners." "I was," Jinwoo said honestly. "When I first saw you at the museum, I saw a tool. I saw a way to win a war. But then you started talking about the periphery of the art. You saw me before I even knew I wanted to be seen." He took her hand, his thumb tracing the line of her palm. "I don't care about the company anymore, Hanbyul. If I lose it all in the legal fallout, I don't care. I just want to be the person you see when you aren't looking for a fight." "You already are," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. Her short hair brushed against his neck. "But don't think you can just give up. You still have to pay for those families' legal fees. You promised." He laughed, a genuine deep sound that he hadn't made in years. "I'll pay, every one." But the peace was fragile. A knock at the door disrupted the moment. It was Jinwoo's lawyer. His face was grim. "Sung Hyun is making a move," the lawyer said. "He's not fighting the fraud charges. He's pivoting. He's going to frame the entire thing on your father, Han Byul-si. He's claiming your father was the one who took the bribes, and that he, Sung Hyun, was misled by the technical reports. He's going to smear a dead man to save his own skin." Hanbyul stood up, her face turning white. "He can't. We have the ledger." "He's claiming the ledger is a forgery," the lawyer replied. "He's got 3 witnesses ready to testify that your father was a gambling addict in debt. He's going for the throat." "We can't just fight him in court," Jinwoo said, his eyes cold and focused. "In court, he can buy time. We need to fight him in the one place he can't buy, the public eye." They spent the next 24 hours orchestrating a counterstrike. It wasn't about more documents. It was about the truth of the man himself. Jinwoo used his digital security contacts to bypass Sung Hyun's reputation management firewall. They didn't look for illegal acts. They looked for the small human cruelties. They found the NDAs, dozens of them, former secretaries, interns, and junior engineers who had been paid to disappear. "We don't release them," Hanbyul said, her voice sharp with insight. "We invite them. We give them a platform." They organized a press conference of the unseen. Instead of Jinwoo or Hanbyul speaking, they filled a room with the people Sung Hyun had stepped on. One by one, they told their stories. A mother whose son had been sickened by the water. An intern who had been fired for reporting a safety violation. The final speaker was Hanbyul. She didn't talk about the ledger. She held up a photo of her father. "My father wasn't a hero," she said into the cameras. "He was a man who liked ramyun and hated lying. He died because he thought the truth was more important than a paycheck. Director Oh thinks he can buy the truth. But the truth isn't for sale. It's right here, in every person in this room." As she spoke, Jinwoo sat in the back, watching her. He realized that this was the real architecture of silence. It wasn't about keeping quiet. It was about the strength it took to build something out of the things people tried to hide. The fallout was immediate. The witnesses Sung Hyun had hired to smear her father retracted their statements. fearing the public backlash. The board of Mirai Group, seeing the PR nightmare, officially removed Sung-hyun from his position and turned over all internal documents to the prosecution. The trap had closed. 6 months later, the Ilsan plant had been decommissioned and was being rebuilt under a new, transparent oversight committee. Oh Sung-hyun was awaiting trial, his assets frozen, and his political aspirations a dark joke in the tabloids. Jin-woo had resigned from his CEO position. He didn't want to manage a company built on the old system. Instead, he started a small boutique firm focused on whistleblower protection and corporate ethics. He was poorer, technically, but for the first time, he slept through the night. He walked through the Seoul Museum of Modern Art, heading toward the back archives. The museum was quiet, the afternoon sun casting long, golden shadows across the stone floors. He found Han Buell in the restoration lab, her short hair tucked under a magnifying visor as she worked on a fragile scroll. "You're late," she said, not looking up. "The exhibit opens in an hour." "I was busy," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "I had to sign the final settlement for the families. It's done, Han Buell. They're taken care of." She stopped her work and turned to him. She looked different. The weary guard was gone, replaced by a woman who looked like she belonged to herself. She walked over to him and took his hand. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I'm better than okay," he said, pulling her close. "I'm real." They stood there in the silence of the museum, a silence they had earned. It wasn't the silence of things unsaid, but the peace of things finally resolved. They walked out of the museum together, not as a CEO and his associate, but as two people who had looked at the periphery and found the center. Behind them, the news cycle moved on to the next scandal. But in a small, windowless office in the prosecutor's building, the first of many indictments was being typed, ensuring that Oh Sung-hyun would spend his remaining years in a room where the only thing he would hear was the echoing weight of his own lies.